there are quite a number of people here that I've been shooting for about 45 years, and there are so many faces in the crowd that, I mean, Susie found me my first studio, and Andre, brilliant photographer, got me interested in art photography, and Arlene has designed dresses for me, and Mark, my assistant somewhere here, who's my right hand, has been working with me for 25 years, and so many good friends. So thank you very, very much for coming out to find out what is I actually do.
Yes, yes. So I guess with that said, maybe you could start by telling us a bit about this body of work.
Yes, well, shadow dancing, I'm known for my underwater work, and I've been doing that for the last almost 25 years now. And I just felt, I mean, there is a time and place for analog photography, right? For
Digital.
What do you call it? Digital photography. But for me, I just got bored. I found that everything was looking the same, and it was really up to the retouchers to give it the shape and the form. And I just felt uninvolved. I think I just felt uninvolved from it. So I heard about this process, which you're seeing now in the backhand picture, called wet collodion. And it's the earliest form of photography. It began in 1850. And it seemed ideal for so many reasons, because film as such was becoming hard to get, and all my favorite films were becoming discontinued. And this was, you make your own film in this process, so it can never go, out of print or out of production, because you're the one in charge. So that really made me feel good. And when I first got started, they said, you don't need a dark room. I now have two, but you don't need a dark room. You can do this in the back of your car in a cardboard box. And I thought, okay, then, I'm in. And I went to a course in Santa Fe for a weekend. And I remember walking into that room and thinking, I'm over my head. This is actually chemistry. I was never very good at chemistry. So, but somehow I just had to do it. So I came back, and I think it was just the challenge of working with a new type of medium and honoring the people who started the photographic process. I mean, when I was shooting with this work in the parks, people would walk past me and say, "What's that?" And I'd go, "That's a camera." You idiot. But no, their iPhones are cameras. They didn't know. So, that's how out of touch we've become. So that was passion for me. But shadow dancing, so technically that's what shadow dancing meant for me, is a reset. I'm now going to work in this medium, and I'll figure it out as I go along. And but emotionally, I was talking to someone before this talk started, and they just got it immediately, which made me so, so happy. But it's a place where the soul resides. I'm not going to get into technical things at this second, but it's a process where the person, can exist along with the shadow. The light can exist at the same time as the dark, the beauty with the struggle. You can be all those things at the same time. And my work is always about loneliness, isolation, beauty, survival, hope, all of that put together in one image. And so in order to do that, and also I must say, by doing that, I'm kind of looking into my own past, the past and the present and even the future. So I'm hoping that these women in the pictures that I've taken make you kind of embrace that and accept that and look in your own lives. And I'm always sort of struggling between darkness and I always say I was made on a Friday, when everyone was thinking about the weekend. So there are parts missing. So I'm bipolar, and I've got terrible migraines and all kinds of other things. But that's because they weren't concentrating in the factory. anyways, how did I get into that? So I always shoot things that have that kind of dark side. And I don't try to do it, it just happens. So I'm hoping that by feeling what I was feeling when I was shooting it, that you also reflect on your own, multi-dimensional being and accept it, because there is a lot of beauty in the darkness, right?
Mm.
So you don't always have to be even. So, which I'm definitely not. So that's I think my answer.
That's shadow dancing.
Yeah.
I guess maybe, before we sat down, you said, it's great to see people in the space looking at the work, because when you don't see it physically in the space, you kind of aren't quite sure what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So maybe you could describe a bit of, what people are looking at when they take a look at these photos.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was younger and an aspiring photographer, and I'd go into galleries, and the directors and the sales staff would say, well, this is an ambrotype, or this is a cyanotype, or this is a selenium whatever print, and I'd be so excited to hear that it was a something, right? But I didn't know what it was. So as I started getting more involved, I really want people to understand what they're looking at, because I think then you'll take the deeper meaning. So first of all, I want to introduce you to my camera. This is a 4x5 view camera. It's not I have one at home that is 100 years old, but it's very heavy and very big. And I'm not very heavy or very big, and my arms aren't long enough for the Deerdorf, So I found this one. It's lighter, and I put an antique lens on it. Okay, so this whole thing represents what you're seeing, because from the lens, which is a 150-year-old lens, so they weren't mass manufactured in those days. So each lens has its own quality and character, and the only way you can find that quality is by trying them. So you go online, you buy it, and then you try it, and you go, it's too sharp, or it's too blurry, or whatever. So you find your lens, and then the film goes in here in the back of the camera. And when I look through the camera, you're seeing exactly what I see, because really I'm shooting a black and white image, okay? But when you look through the camera, you're seeing the color world. But what you're actually feeling is that this figure is in limbo in the bellows. This person can't exist unless you have the front image and the back image. So with wet collodion, and I'm really trying to be clear here because it will really help. This is my film holder, and the process that I do is called either tintype, and that's because you pour your film that you've made onto a black piece of aluminum and the image comes up. Or, which I prefer now, is an ambrotype. And here you cut the glass, you clean the heck out of it, and then you can only see the image if it's behind black. Oh. And I like the glass because I find it cleaner. I get a lot more detail in the whites, and I just like it better. So I would shoot the image. I'd put it. So I'd pour the film onto the glass plate, let it get jelly like a nail polish. As it gels up, it's ready. And then you have a series of steps that you have to do within 5 minutes, including shooting the picture. And I exposed it, so I would put the glass plate in here. I'd put it in here. I would make sure the cap is on, and I'd lift the dark slide. And then Mark, wherever he is, over there, usually interprets my counting for 14 seconds. I will sometimes start by accident at 4, or I'll go 10, and then my mind will wander, and I'll go 11, 12, 13, 14. But he's with me. And then we ask the model to hold really, really still. And I take out this film, and I put in a second piece of color film, and shoot it in color. And then what I do afterwards is digitize it, and the color image is printed on the back of this plexiglass, and the black and white image, which is the handmade collodion film, is printed on the background. And you're looking through it, like I'm looking through it, and that figure is kind of in the middle space again. So, so that was my idea. And it took, I'm not joking, 12 years to make it workable. People were begging me to stop. They couldn't stand how sad I was at the end of a shoot. I'd have a shoot, and if you do anything wrong, if the temperature rises, or you haven't filtered your mixtures or things like that enough, your pictures won't turn out. And you've got the model there, and you've got,
Hi.
You've got the model there, and you've got the hair and makeup people. Like, everything's attuned to that shoot. And I'd say there's a lot of wastage. You have to be prepared to say it didn't work out, like just let go, which I sadly did. So, yeah.
I was gonna, I think that segues really nicely into what kept you sort of persevering.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah.
Stubbornness. I wasn't. What? Tenacious.
Tenacity, yes.
I have tenacity.
Yeah.
Also, I wouldn't allow myself to quit. Like, everybody who knows me has heard me talking about this, worrying about this for years and years and years. And I wouldn't allow myself to quit. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd go to bed thinking, this is it. I'm going back to digital, or I'm going to just do film. And then I woke up the next morning, well, maybe if I, and I keep going for another year or two.
Or 3.
And I have to say that in this process, it's very niche. So to get the answers to the problems it's a very slow process. Even getting the answers is a very slow process. So I would go online and I'd scan the problem, and then there are certain people out there who would help me. And some of them just, you have to know where the help's coming from, and it made it more complicated. So I made months-long mistakes because of bad advice, but there's always very good advice too. I just didn't learn how to filter it in the beginning. So I have people I've made friends with all over the world who do it, and they help me. I have like a Zoom tutorial and go, what do you think that cloud is? Or the worst was, it looked like I'd done a shoot and it looked like someone had taken a black paintbrush and gone, and there were little tiny flicks of black paint everywhere. And
what was it?
It was many things. I think what I narrowed it down to was that my silver bath was overused. And this is the other thing. I mean, there's so many dark holes you could go down. The silver bath was overused because even though it was used once, nobody asked what size my silver bath was. So they were talking to me about a big silver bath, and mine was a tiny silver bath.
Right.
So it got dirty really, really quick.
Yeah.
So for, I'd say, about a year, we couldn't figure that problem out. Like, it's just crazy. So I was very happy to have the underwater work to retreat to in the summer, to be able to feel good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was what it was.
Okay. And I guess, knowing you for quite some time now, about 15 years, I know you as somebody who jumps back and forth between different bodies of work. Yeah. Was that something that kept you going along?
Yeah. Because underwater work, well, okay, I'll say the best way to explain it is, with underwater work, the camera is my hand. Like, it's just so comfortable that honestly, I get an idea and I know what I have to do, or I will discuss it with Mark and we'll figure it out together, and it will get done and it will be a pleasure to shoot.
Yeah.
With this process and this camera, it took many, many years for this camera to be an extension of my arm. I mean, first of all, you're looking at the picture upside down and backwards. So that takes a bit of time to figure out. And then you have to find the camera you like to work with, the size you like to work with, find the lens you want to work with, and then learn how to, when you move left, you need to move right, and when you move up, you need to move down. So it took a bit of time. So it was very nice to have that breather of underwater. Let's just do it. Oh, yeah. Love it, and then this.
It must have made directing the models a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I rely on the models to know what to do. Yeah. Can you move?
Yeah.
I don't say left or right.
No. And there's a very specific aesthetic, throughout the work, from the backgrounds to the design of the garb that they're wearing. Was there a thought process behind that aspect of it? Because I know you think about that quite a bit.
I do. Well, I didn't know it. I found out that I am very inspired by the black and white movies of the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
And also, from the very beginning, 1984, my first show was all backgrounds. Not always painted backgrounds, but I always found, like in young people's theater, they had a train mural. And I asked to go in there, and I used the train mural. And I'd always have this make-believe thing going on. I don't like my work to look real.
Okay.
It's more of a feeling than it is like a document or something that is specific and very sharp. I have to be kind of in more of a painterly space for me to feel like I've gotten it.
Yeah.
And the clothes are very important. I've worked a number of stylists. I've worked with. I plan the hair and makeup, and and I also very often will obscure the face. And I do that purposely because I want the viewer to be able to put themselves into the picture and feel those emotions and kind of get involved. And it's a fine line that you're treading between fashion and art, and I find that if it's too specific, it's like Kate Moss, right? It's her picture, right? But if you give it a bit more of a story, then it can be about you and your feelings.
Yeah, and I imagine this process allows you to kind of do that. There's like a natural sort of haziness to it.
Yeah, and we're always experimenting with that haziness. Like, is it a slow shutter speed? Is it movement? Is it background movement or person movement? Is it, it just got blurry. My exposures for this were sometimes 14 seconds. And late in the game, someone told me that I needed to get a head brace because all the photographers in the 18th century used these metal contraptions that, kept your head solid. And that sounds like a good idea because my pictures were getting a little too abstract,
Did you find one?
Yes. So what I did, I did, but the crazy thing is, it was just at the start of the war in the Ukraine.
Okay.
And there were two people who made it. There was a guy in the Ukraine and there was a guy in America. And I thought, well, I'm going with the guy in America. I'll never see it.
Yeah.
So I bought it from the guy in America, and I'm waiting for my head brace. And a month goes by, and then I can't remember actually who I sent it to because the website wasn't happening. I thought, oh my God, I've just spent $1,000 and it's gone into ether. No, he said he's very sorry. People in this method of shooting don't often check emails. They are very off the grid. And he said, I'm sorry, I haven't been checking my email. Yes, I did get your money. And I sent it to my manufacturer in the Ukraine.
So he outsources.
4 or 5 months later, the damn thing comes. So there's so many things, that you learn and kind of work with in this thing. But it's a very slow-moving train.
Yeah. Did you make good use of it, I hope, after waiting that long?
Yes, although the next show I'm doing, I'm not going to use it at all.
Oh, okay.
And it's very heavy. It really is about 50 pounds to move.
Oh, wow.
And that's why everybody in those pictures are like this, So,
That's
it does a job.
Yeah, definitely. It was very effective. Were there any sort of, since this body of work spanned 12 years, you said?
More, actually, but yeah.
Okay.
We'll say 12.
And we'll say 12. Were there any, elements of this process that you took into other bodies of work? that you were making at the same
Yes.
time?
The show I did right after this, which will be here in February, March or something, just
Yeah, in
second
the
glance.
spring. Yeah.
I'm just nailing them down a bit here. Called Second Glance, uses the same method. You know, I'm still using wet collodion, I'm still using film, it's still slow exposure, it's still very costumey, but I'm doing it in an entirely different way. So this is my hand now, and I'm playing around with it, and I feel much looser, more skillful, and so I'm more playful with it.
Okay. Were there any specific, inspirations that you had for this body of work?
Um, yes, in a weird kind of way. I felt like um, for the first time in a very long time, I was actually making a picture instead of taking a picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so much pre-production involved and so much post-production, and then it's just you can actually feel like you're carving a sculpture out of stone. There are so many elements to it that need to get done in order to create that, you know? It's not like point and shoot. And the challenge of that I found very inspiring.
Yeah. I guess speaking about challenges and sort of successes, what are you the happiest about with this body of work? What brings you the most joy about it looking at it now?
I just love it. I don't know. It feels right.
Yeah.
You know, and I go with my gut. You know, it's always about how I feel. And I kind of know when a picture's not working, and you can't pretend, you know, that it's almost there.
Yeah.
I've learned the hard way with that. And so, yeah, I just gave it my A game and kept plowing away. And I feel like when I look at this work, it's like a bit of a family. You know, I remember the models and the people and the conversations and the fun we had. And it's just like a really like a home photo album for me, you know?
Oh, that's a beautiful sentiment.
Mm.
Oh. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kyle. It was fun to talk about. Hope you learned something.